Are you on the right mic? I don't know. What's a mic?
What is mic?
How am I supposed to know? Am I God? Hi, Vanessa.
Hi, Adam.
You're starting to get back into the groove. A little rusty in this old podcasting game.
Yep.
We're now at what is a mic stage of learning how to podcast.
It's all coming back to me now.
We're joined by a seasoned podcaster, Gumshoe journalist, Portland authority, Nancy Rommelmann.
Hello. Yes, Portland, where I just was for a week.
Yeah. Every once in a while, Portland just can't let go of you.
It can't. Well, I think it's probably mutual at this point, but
it's a codependent relationship.
We have a codependent relationship. That is exactly true.
Is it the kombucha? What is it?
Is
it the kombucha or the burning buildings?
It's not definitely not the kombucha. Kombucha scares me, man. I'm like, what is that blobby thing in there? It is the way the stories are told from Portland and how canted one way or the other they are and have been obviously since before 2020. And it just gets me going. It gets me so riled up. So I got to go out there and do what I do, which of course, I have a few people that are like, oh, thank you, Nancy, so much for telling the truth. And everybody else is like, libtard, fuck you. So it's just like, okay, you just, oh, sorry, are we cursing here?
Yeah. You can curse away.
Okay. So yeah.
Are there still populations that don't accept cursing in America? Because didn't Trump break that ceiling?
I've been on podcasts where they don't have to say it. You just kind of understand, like, you can be a good girl.
Yeah, but anything that goes on the radio, like, it will get flagged. Like, you can't just
they'll
let your curse flag fly free.
Well, let's start with your latest True Leather reporting in Portland.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because last time we spoke, we were talking about the underlying boredom that was driving young, confused, and generally troubled, not just men, I guess, young people, young folks, to express their hormones through what they considered political activism, and in ways that played out sometimes violently, sometimes bizarrely and cultishly. But the key for you was that the way those people were being depicted in most, I hate the word mainstream media, we need another phrase for this, but in what most people would call mainstream media, didn't really align with the insanity of the situation. So you went there yourself to talk to those people and understand how they understand themselves. What is their either worldview or underlying, pathology. And generally, we were critical. And in fact, recently I wrote my piece about the nihilist culture, which we've discussed and kind of aligns with this phenomenon. But this time going into Portland, you're responding to the backlash, to the backlash, to the backlash, to the backlash, to the backlash. And if anything, it was the Trump administration's performative to the point of, political persecution. I don't know what you want to call it, but the threats from the Trump administrations and to some extent implementation of the Trump administration of sending troops to Portland to sort things out. And this time you were coming in, I didn't like what the kids were doing, but I don't like sending boots on the ground to deal with the kids either.
I'm gonna reel things back a little bit, because when you were talking about, the kids and the nihilism or this and that. So, okay. So I've been thinking about this a lot, obviously. So, Portland had a really upward trajectory from about 2004 to about 2016. It sang that siren song, come here, live your achievable dream, your green dreams, open a bike shop, do whatever you want. The politics are super liberal, and people responded. The city grew and grew and grew and grew, very, very young people. Then I remember writing a piece in 2010 for the Oregonian that I called as Portland, the New Neverland, because people had come and all of a sudden it's like, but wait a minute, I thought the rent was $85 and now it's $600 and I have to go work in an office park in Beaverton to make the ends meet. What is this? Like, this is not what I signed up for. But now it's still growing. It's the darling of everybody's eye, the restaurant scene, the food carts, the indie music, Portlandia, the TV show. It's still going up till about 2016. Things kind of, it's like it's a bubble, right? It's a bubble. This is what happens in cultures. Like, you don't go up forever. And people kind of like, I noticed in 2017, actually, 2018 especially, a lot of empty storefronts downtown, which was weird because like everybody was coming and building things, but then maybe you couldn't afford the dream. Like, it didn't work out because the rents are higher now because the landlords are like, hey, I got competition. So Portland was already there was kind of a correction going on, right? Well, it's full of young people and they're not very happy about this. They're like, what? Wait a second. I thought like this was the place where we were going to actuate bike lanes and, polyamory and everything's going to be perfect in my perfect world. Well, okay, it wasn't. So you had people that were kind of like cranky and getting super also like everybody hates the word woke, but they were getting kind of super woke. They were like loving canceling and like that guy's not Thai and he has a Thai restaurant. Fuck him. And we're going to drive him out of town. It's like, okay, really sort of isn't the great utopian it was going to be. Then 2020 happens. Okay. 2020 happens. It's COVID. George Floyd is killed. You've got all these young people that now not only have all that stuff in the background, they now can't leave the house. Their jobs are gone. They can't go get a drink or see music or have sex or whatever. It's a mess. And all of a sudden, boom, they can be in the streets save against Trump. And they hate Trump. They've been marching against Trump since before he won the 2016 election. So the idea that these people are this unified fighting force, 600, 2,000 Antifa, is not so. Are there radicals in Portland? Yes. Are there anarchists in Portland? Yes. Do I know a ton about them? I do not. But I know they exist because they've always existed in the Pacific Northwest. That is part of the culture. But they're very, very underground. The people that were out there in 2020 were people that were like, oh man, give me that black shirt. Give me that helmet. They were people that agglomerated around a movement and marched and marched and marched. And it was epiphanic and almost orgasmic every night. And they did not have a goal except just fuck shit up, which
and
they
how
did.
Much of it was Portlanders versus people who kind of got whiff of the movement and then came?
Okay, I can't answer that exactly, but I will say because Portland's youth population is so enormous, I met kids that were there in Black Bloc. They go to Reed. Okay. Did some come from out of town? Probably. They didn't have anything else to do, right? They didn't have a job at this point. But the idea, and I wrote this recently, the idea that like Alex Soros sits in his penthouse and puts out a bat signal like everybody go to Portland, it's just, that's not how it works. All right. Plus, Antifa sort of doesn't want to talk to me. I love, Adam, that you said that all these people talk to me and I got to know they won't talk to you. Like, that's part of the deal. Like, they were not, and part of the reason is because they can't.
I said you talk to them.
Well, I did. I talked to them. They yelled in my face, fuck you, your photography equals death. Like, wait, what? Hi, explain this to me. Anyway, so now the question you're at is like, all right, where do these people go? That's the question. Now, Trump is asserting that they're all there. Antifa's there. Antifa's there. It's a terrorist organization. I'm like, okay, well, if Antifa is there in the numbers that you believe it is, what have they been doing since June? Where are the 600 fighting force when there's 20 people in front of the building? Okay, so no. People have asked me, where did they go? Well, where did they go? They were young. They were in college. They went on and had lives. Like, it was a phase. I do not believe that they were every single one of those people out there in their helmets in front of the photo, like, I am going to be the next Weather Underground. This is what I'm going to do with my life. Of course it's not. Of course it's not. So who's out there now? This is very, very interesting. I haven't talked about this yet really on a podcast, but I am writing it right now. So you do have some of the black clad kids, not a lot. I mean, I was out there, not that many nights, 5 nights I was out there. Most nights, there were about 40 people. Saturday night, there were 200. Part of the reason was the press was there. the Trump's order to get the guard in there had just been shot down that day. But of the 200, this is very interesting. Well, first of all, you had about 100 looky-loos. You had like some people in evening clothes. Oh, hello. I think I'm going to see what's going on. You had this guy that came in, like he was all disguised. He's like, do you need protection? You're a journalist. I came here. I'm a groyper and I don't like what's going on. And I'm going to bed. And he's like following me around. I'm like, okay, whatever. Like everybody also.
I don't know what a groper is. Is this
a groyper? Is the like white nationalist followers of Nick Fuentes.
It's like a neo-Nazi.
Yeah, I mean,
12-year-old Nazis. That's
the thing is that he was 37. I have to say, which is always bizarre. Like when you talk to people one-on-one, when they're not feeling like they have to be in the mob, and like it is pretty incredible that everybody's pretty nice. I know that won't make me popular, but they are. They want to talk to you about their lives. Everybody wants to tell you about their life now. 2020, no, nobody wants to talk to you. Just want to steal your phone and rough you up. So of the 200 people there, let's use that number on Saturday. About 100 were just onlookers. Everybody's filming, of course, because this is all a performance.
And it's a mutual performance, right?
Yes,
because it's a performance to the faux Antifa crowds, and it's the performance for the groypers and for the Trump administration. Everybody's there to play their role on that stage.
There's three different, let's put the looky-loos to the side. Everybody's there. They all want to tell their story. They all want an identity. There's three different groups there. You've got the ICE agents, which you want to talk about performance. You're standing there in front of the gates. There's a canned announcement that comes on like, you are standing on federal property. If you don't get off the sidewalk, you could be arrested. And then about 2 minutes later, the gates open, the guys come out, push people back, they yell in their faces. Maybe they arrest one person, they go back in. 45 minutes later, it repeats. It's like, oh my God, if this were a pilot, I would not be signing up for a season. It's really boring. But there's three groups there now besides the looky-loos. You've got, let's call the protesters, the ones that are protesting against ICE. Some of them are in cartoon costumes. Some of them are super obnoxious. Some of them are in black. But guess what else you have? So you've got the ICE guys. You've got the protesters. Oh, you've got a counter-protester group here that you definitely did not have in 2020. And yes, they are pro-Trump, they are pro-ICE, but they are Charlie Kirk fans. And they are standing around in shirts that say, we are Charlie Kirk. And when the more obnoxious of the sort of anti-ICE protesters, and okay, these people can get so obnoxious. You're like, wow, did your mother teach? Do you like talk to your mother with that mouth? It's so, they're being deliberately provocative. In one case, I'm like, this dude wants one of the Charlie Kirkos to punch him in the mouth. Of course he does. He wants to get punched in the mouth so that they can film it and say, see, we're being besieged again. And the Kirk bros just stand there. They don't do anything. They're like, Jesus loves you. They are not. That is something I've never seen.
Did they already have a video of the Kirk bros staring and grinning at them and talk about the white grin of oppression?
The white grin of oppression. That's my next book.
Right? No, wasn't that the line with I forget the name of the school children and the National Mall, right? Yeah, exactly. With the Native American guy. So there was the right grin of oppression.
Bless Robbie Suave for getting that story right and just watching all the video and going, hey, actually wasn't quite like what you're depicting.
And the Charlie Kirk bros, all men, like actually bros? Or
no,
mixed?
There's some women. There's some women too. And then of course, I'm not there right now. It will change. I did just speak with a friend of mine who is there just about every night. And she said it's changing a little because the press has gone home. Like, I don't know what happens. Like all of a sudden the press agglomerates and then they all leave. I met a Washington Post guy there, a public radio person there.
So interesting to me because like you'd think that the press is relatively irrelevant with like social media, but I guess it still has, people still want to get on the press.
Well, Trump is making it a story. I mean, come on, when it's so ludicrous what he has been saying in terms of the city being completely on fire for 5 years. I'm like, what are you talking about? But the one I saw today, it might have been from yesterday, where he said, every time I see something, the city's on fire. And all the stores.
To be fair, every time you see Portland, it's not to tell you another day in Portland without a fire. It's like a counter to 200 days without
that's
federal
right.
building being attacked.
Well, the federal buildings were not attacked from fall of 2000 until this past June. So that's 5 years.
The fall of 2020.
Fall of 2020. Now, here is what is correct about Portland, and I made a little video about this today. Is Portland depressed? Yes, it is. And why is it depressed? Because, as I said, it was already contracting. The bubble was already bursting in 2018. That's number one. Number two, 2020, COVID and the Summer of Rage, where they punched themselves in the face for over and over and over and over and destroyed their own downtown. And then they passed Measure 110, which legalized all street drugs, but they didn't implement the treatment part. So Portland did become horrible. Like, it was horrible. In 2021 and 2022, the murder rate was the highest it ever has been. The streets looked like zombie town. The stores were closed. It was bad. It was bad. Leadership has now changed. It is not as liberal, still very, very liberal, of course. Are they trying to dig out? Yes, they are. Crime is down. It's 35 murders last year versus 100 and something at the high point. Wow. It has gained population. It lost population for 3 years. It's gained population. Is it still in the doldrums? Yes, it is. But as I also put in the video today, Trump kicking it in the nuts repeatedly is not a very nice thing to do to a city that really, is trying to come back. But he is going to keep doing this until he gets the reaction he wants. He wants Portland to start burning itself down again, because then he can be the biggest jackboot ever. And he was right. And, and he can have a redo of 2020, which he didn't exactly win, right? Everybody, look at everybody, Comey and Letitia James, and everybody's going to pay. I'm not saying that, I'm not going to get into the validity of different court cases against Trump, but he's just going to keep spouting whatever he wants to spout. And he's got Kristi Noem, which, by the way, when she showed up last week, there were about 12 protesters there. It was daytime. She's on the roof. And you know what they did? They played the Benny Hill theme song. That her. It's like they are trying to be goofy, and I hope that they do. My two choices of Portlander and the protest is, one, everybody just stays home. Just stay home. Just, why not? Or B, they just get so super goofy. Like they're doing choreographed dances in front of ICE now. Like that would be great to keep photographing, but it doesn't really matter because, I'm sorry, you've got the useful idiot reporters there that were at the White House last week. Don't get me started. I'm so livid at that. Who just, they cherry pick their shots, they start fights, and it's bad.
So you mentioned Kristi Noem. I have to ask you, do you think you said that you don't really have an ability to tell what is the component of Antifa in all of those protests over the past 5 years. What even is Antifa? Is there Antifa? But seriously, is Antifa the people who are the people who are organized anarchists? Let's call it the organized anarchist type. Are they the anti-Proud Boys? Are they as bad as Hezbollah and Hamas, or worse?
No, they're not as bad as ISIS or Hezbollah or Hamas. And they're also not in any great force in Portland. Now, does that mean they won't grow in response to, someone kicking their city over and over, and more people are like, you know what, screw it. I'll go become more radical. I don't know. I don't know.
But you know what's interesting about the Hezbollah Hamas thing? And Vanessa, I assume you didn't watch that. There was the roundtable, the Antifa roundtable that where Trump invited influencers and morons
and liars.
I did not. And
liars to discuss the threat of Antifa, in which Kristi Noem thanked Trump for his attention on this matter to deal with the domestic Hezbollah, Hamas, ISIS combined superpower. The interesting thing about all this is, and this is something that I've been talking to friends about. I don't think I don't know if there is a way to deal with this in a serious journalistic way, but it does feel like Trump has, kind of war envy after everything that happened in Iran and his role in, relaxing hostilities in Israel and his approach in Europe, which has generally been to try and project stability and like leave us the fuck alone. I think that actually after the attack on Iran, it almost, it triggered something in him, and there has been more and more war rhetoric that he has been using domestically and locally with the attacks on the Venezuelan drug cartels, and now about the local domestic quote unquote terrorism infestation that he's trying to uproot. I don't know what it means about the current direction of MAGA where generally it sees itself as very isolationist, very, very quote unquote peace driven. Like, we don't want to get entangled.
Yeah.
But we also do want to feel that sense of drive and mission that comes with war. Mm-hmm. So we find it domestically.
Yeah, and then to also like exert primacy. I mean, this is what he wants. Nobody knows more about anything in the world. Nothing, antibiotics, rocket science, bread baking. Trump knows more than anybody. Ever.
My mind goes to kind of two places as you say that. On the one hand, I think about the timing, I guess, with Charlie Kirk's assassination and this idea of like, we must rise up against these leftist radicals. And so that tying into that moment of that feeling and that like inertia, that momentum building. And then the other place my mind goes just like, I don't know. I mean, typical in third world countries when you have a tyrant, like a war is excellent for solidifying control and getting people on your side to allow you to do all manner of things.
Threat, yeah, any kind of threat that you can ramp up against in response to, feel justified in your ramping up and your abridging of rights. Yeah, there was somebody. I mean, let's not take every right wing influencer too seriously as a barometer of the Trump administration, but I remember, I think it was after the Kirk assassination that somebody literally said something like a prominent account, but it's still a Twitter influencer, said this is our Reichstag fire moment. Like don't say that out loud, at least.
I think it's very interesting. I think, Vanessa, you are very astute. It was a moment to, take Kirk's death, which was, I do think it was a very huge thing that happened. It was shocking. It was horrifying. It was divisive, and people really should be ashamed of some of their reactions.
Although for a change, giving credit where it's due, yes, most Democrats and most commentators on the left did the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
Ezra Klein,
foremost, and we'll talk about this later. But the Ezra Klein commentary, which was not an exception on the majority of the left. Of course, there are still the annihilists that then banded against Ezra Klein, and that's a portion of the left. I don't want to put a fake percentage of it, but it's there. But the public figures were responsible and recognized it for what it is, and they were not even putting the prominent figures weren't doing caveats. They were not saying, yeah, he was this and he was this and this, or rather, I should say, they didn't say, yeah, it was bad, but it's not bad, but it was like, no, awful.
It's bad.
Don't do that. It's bad.
So Trump is, you have people that are good at taking advantage of a tragedy, right? To gain something for themselves. And I think that does factor into why he is doubling down on Portland. I think it's also on his bucket list. 2020 didn't go exactly his way. And he is just Portland is vulnerable because everybody remembers Portland as being the city that rioted the longest and the most. And so I was in LA when he sent the Marines and the Guard and everything there, and I was covering that story. And if you recall, there was some violence for sure. People set Waymos on fire and they looted, and I think a cop car had like cinder blocks dropped on it from an overpass. But for the most part, Portland did not explode. And I think the Trump administration thought, man, if there's any city that's going to burn itself down, it's LA, man. They're good at that. They know how to do that. And then it didn't happen. So it's like, okay, Portland. Of course, Portland's going to burn itself down. And most people in America have not been to Portland. They don't think about Portland, but they remember, there's that institutional memory. And so I think he is going to just keep, as I said, kicking Portland in the nuts until there's a bigger reaction, until he gets the conflagration that can confirm that he was correct, that they need to go in there. As someone who has stood in front of the building and who talks to people every day there on what's going on in terms of lawyers and press and other people that are out there, is Portland depressed? Yes, there are problems. Is the problem down at ICE? No, it's not. It's not.
This also actually emphasizes the strength of nonviolent resistance, because thankfully we are still in a somewhat liberal, somewhat democratic society, and I think we're actually more democratic than we are liberal, but whatever. We are mostly quite properly democratic, somewhat liberal society. And the reactions, I think the public responses to just seeing sheer jackbootery is probably going to be negative. So you don't think so?
I
think that if and this is why LA, Trump stopped pushing LA when he didn't get the response that he wanted, because he is savvy enough to understand that if he actually stirs trouble with fascist looking soldiers, it's not going to look good for him. It's not actually going to get the result. He does want the extreme reaction to be able to keep this cycle going and benefit from it. But, his goal is not actually to get thousands of enemies into, gulags or political prison camps. He wants the excitement and the popularity that comes with quelling chaos. He wants anarchists that he gets to quell and show his strength against, and maybe arrest 10 of them, but not send soldiers to seize property and arrest journalists without warrants. Not because he has moral objections to doing that, but because he understands that it's not going to look good. And
it's all about the optics, baby.
It's the optics. That's what he cares about, right?
Yeah.
That's why it's important to understand that it does reflect on our society, that this is, and because he responds to what he understands will play with our society. And if my analysis is correct, this shows how important it is that, even the people that are actually kind of being pushed by a semi-authoritarian state to not overreact to it and to actually be chill about it. And in being chill in this society, we're not talking about a truly dictatorial society, but in our society, to be chill about it actually diffuses Trump's power.
Don't take the bait. Don't take the bait. Don't take the bait. The one issue in terms of the jackbootery isn't popular. Yes, it's not popular with the average American. But in 2020, we saw, again, for lack of a better term, the mainstream media painting a certain picture that wasn't really correct. A lot of the violence was coming from the left. It wasn't really peaceful protests. I think that finally was understood. But that was a very hard pill for them to swallow, and it was something they didn't want to disseminate. Okay. But they had power. That message seeps into the world, and maybe it makes policy. Maybe it has people get elected.
And you're saying they had power, you mean who? You mean
the press. The press is going out and telling the world, look, there's nothing happening here. It's fine. There's that Chiron with the, mostly peaceful protests with the flames behind him. And
fiery, but mostly peaceful.
Fiery, yes. So So now we've got sort of the opposite going on. We've got the administration and the cabinet members all saying these things that are happening, which are equally not true, right? And so they have the power, obviously, to make this be a story that enough people believe, that have it make policy. I'll give you an example. In 2020, because, the left were the right people back then, people were saying, no, the Portland police are working with the Proud Boys. They're working with the Proud Boys. What are they saying now? The Portland police, they're working with Antifa. It's like, it's all the same thing. It's all the same thing, just with the opposite message.
This is actually a good way to start transitioning to the discussion that Vanessa wanted to have about Ta-Nehisi Coates versus Ezra Klein. It goes I'm kind of like jumping the gun on this, but it goes to the issue of one side, two sides, or multiple sides that are playing a factional game, wanting to gain advantage over each other and using information as a tool for their own, vision or social agenda. And nobody in that story, and I think that applies to the battle between the right-wing press and the left-wing press during 2020 and now, and how this flipped the way you're describing in their equally false depiction of what's happening in Portland and in liberal cities. And I think it applies both to Ezra and Coates, where you're encountering people who constantly try to shape the world that they describe to either match their delusions, match their fantasies, or in order to evoke certain responses from people for the sake of an agenda. And nobody in that story cares about what is actually happening and cares about reality. And I think this is such a simple fact, and this is the true nature of illiberalism that we're dealing with, that so many of our problems, so many of our political discussions keep trying to keep slipping into, but does this story fit my agenda? Does this story fit what I'm trying to, the ultimate world that I'm trying to engineer? And not, is this actually what's happening? Is this actually a good reflection of things, how things play out on the ground? Which, if that were the priority, if simple truth were the priority, we would have been in a very different place politically, not just because, we wouldn't have been constantly in this cycle of hysteria, but also it would have probably led to better policies, because policies would have been constantly tested against results. And, Portland, forget about 2020, before 2020, already in the decline from 2016 to 2020, Portland would have been in a better place if the priorities of left-leaning media were to actually report reality and not just to play culture war. It would have recognized, damn, our policy, the policies that we think are morally correct are leading to horrendous results. Maybe we should have some self-reflection. Maybe we should encourage Democrats who want to implement certain type of social welfare programs to rethink how they do it. Maybe not. You don't need to go vote Republican, but maybe you should reconsider how you're implementing your policies. Similarly, for the right, a crucial part of a liberal society is to have the feedback with reality. And if your feedback is completely reality adjacent, then not only are you in constant histrionics, playing into histrionics, you're also just seeing declining social results because nobody's responding.
So I have two comments to that. One is something I've written a lot. People make notoriously bad decisions when there's an emergency. If you're panicked, you don't have time to think of what I should do. So it serves people that want you to do what they want to do to keep you panicky, right? But the other thing you said about, engineering things, there's the phrase, I don't want to trim the facts to fit the theory. As a journalist, I don't want to engineer anything. That's not my job. My job is not to engineer, to work toward an end. My job is to, go in and see what's going on and do my best to tell you what I've seen and what people tell me. this is very not popular. People don't care about that. They want a bigger dildo, right? They want something that is like, no, I want you to tell me. And if you don't tell me what I like, I want to hate you because then I feel something. And we are dealing with it now. We're dealing with, obviously, politicians are going to try to engineer things because that they believe that's their job. But the journalists would be engineering things. I think it's really gross. I think it's really, really, really gross. And I had someone comment the other day, a fan of my work on Twitter. And he's like, I really appreciate what you do, but it's a losing game. Nobody cares about this anymore. Nobody cares. I'm like, okay, well, too bad. Keep doing it.
Nobody cares because the way they consume the news is like they've self-selected for some narrative filter, and then they don't want anything that or they're never going to come across anything that isn't that.
And it doesn't get on your feed. Let me give you an example. Let me just dish a little more on Nick Sartor, who was at the protests about a week and a half ago when I was there. Not much going on. And then there's I can see something to my left. There's a little fire. Not very big, little. There's really nothing going on. So everybody kind of sees what's to go. It's gone. Oh, okay. So it's one of the protesters. He's lit a small American flag on fire. Okay. This guy runs up. I see this with my eyeballs. He runs up and he takes the guy's flag and then stamps it out. I'm like, okay, weird. But I didn't know who that guy was that did that. I figure he's a counter-protester, whatever. The beef seemed to stop. I didn't pay much attention to it. Didn't seem very interesting. Well, apparently, this guy who grabbed the flag, his name is Nick Sartor, calls himself an investigative journalist. No comment. The police arrested him for I guess being rowdy, but also for taking someone's property. I'm sorry. It's like, that's somebody's property, right? If you come in and grab something out of my hand, that's not yours. They let him go right away. What happens? Just stay with me here. So within 12 hours, Pam Bondi, who I believe is the Attorney General of the United States, finds out about this. And she seeks the Assistant Attorney General to now investigate the entire Portland Police Bureau. What else does she do? She calls Nick Sartor and says, I'm so sorry that this happened. As I put in my reason piece, did she make him some milk and cookies too? And then what happens a few days later? Oh, he's at the White House. He's at the round table, sitting there. And Trump says, I'm so sorry how horrible it was that happened to you, but at least you became famous. And Nick Sartor is like, yeah, here I brought you the flag. I'm like, this motherfucker is this is what is news. And I said stuff on Twitter, like, yeah, well, look, he's saving the flag and everything. I'm like, okay, do you know, I can. That he is going to be the person that is going to be, I don't care about if he's getting celebrated. I don't care if he's making money, but he's helping to make policy, right? Because he has the president's ear and he and all these other useful idiots are like honing in on the fire. I'm standing there. There's nothing going on except this little fire. But that's what you see. Portland's on fire. It's like,
well, in fairness, this is not media. He is and always was in this context a prop. And it's not like he is helping to make policy. He is a prop used by people who already want to make that policy to create it.
Yes, but Kristi Noem on stage says to him, thank you to these brave journalists. Because, because Antifa is worse than ISIS and Hezbollah. It's like,
Right.
Just,
but
journalists were the people non grata on that side. Shocking.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Adam. I find it so bald. Okay, like there's just nothing subtle about this. This is like, you're not even trying to be subtle. It's just, I shouldn't be shocked, but I am. I continue to be disappointed for the poor ink-stained wretches that this is what's passing now for important, brave journalism.
I don't know that this is, this is to me an indictment of an unsurprising but still dispiriting indictment of our government, our current government.
Yeah.
But I don't see this as reflecting anything about journalism.
You're right.
The state of media for sure, but I don't think. I'm sure that the blogosphere and it's not blogosphere, whatever it is, the creeposphere.
Creeposphere?
on the right will see this and will see him, this heroic journalist, truth teller who salvaged the flag. But okay, I don't think this is actually, when we're talking about our problem in media, this is true in the sense that so much media now is just culture war waged through social. But I see that as separate from my concern with institutional media, because the institution,
true, for sure.
The thing is that what you're doing, this is our proof of you don't need to be equipped with a badge or the credential of an institution, let alone of a university, to go and do journalism. You do journalism by going to a place and describing what you see. Now, the skills are in being able to do a better job at sifting what you see, but the bottom line is that this is true journalism is get information, convey information. That is what it is. And I don't worry about that ability to be lost for humanity. It might decline, if anything, because of AI, but I think this natural skill exists in any person who is still attuned to his lying eyes, But the problem is institutionally. When we're talking about the problem with media, it's more the institutions that have developed practices that actually are important for refining these basic human skills of conveying information and being able to apply it A, at scale, and B, on increasingly complicated issues like geopolitics, economics, etc. Well, politics for that matter, like actual, passage of bills. You need people with expertise and with an institutional tradition of how to get the best results, best practices. That's the thing that's getting lost when these edifices are being collapsed by partisan delusions, right? That's the story of 2020 and the despair of quote unquote big J journalism being exposed or being taken over by hacks. I think it's a different story than, people who are just, truly hacks and scammers who are not really validated by anybody, who are just being brought up as props in order to pass really bad legislation. I mean, I don't know.
Now,
it's like, to me,
like pull it forward 5-10 years.
He is Joe the Plumber of 2025. This is the same. It is just a public. I don't want talking about this in the context of journalism just because Kristi Noam, who again compared Antifa to Hezbollah and Hamas, compared what's his face to a journalist. Like, okay,
a brave journalist,
for sure,
so
a true hero, because he emerged from the tunnels of Hamas in Portland with a flag. Holding the flag aloft. Come on, of course, that's a hero.
It's just a show. Art. It's truly just like an episode of the Trump show. Yeah, just like. But okay,
no, okay, it's disgusting. I'm just separating that from the.
You're correct.
Media
You're correct. You are correct.
And now to media criticism, Vanessa.
Now to another brave journalist. So I wanted to talk about the Ezra Klein Ta-Nehisi Coates conversation because it's funny because I had never heard of Charlie Kirk before he was assassinated. Didn't know who he was.
Wow.
I as longtime Uncertain Things listeners know, I'm pretty unplugged when it comes to politics. I attempt to live my life off of the stream of madness. But via Adam and others, I become informed and then we talk about it on Uncertain Things. So then funnily enough, Adam was in a very rare moment off the grid when I texted him about Ezra Klein and Ta-Nehisi Coates, like, hey, do you think we should talk about this? It's pretty interesting. And Adam was like, oh, I don't want to talk about Coates and Israel. And I was like, no. There was another interview.
Yeah, something else happened.
And I guess the reason why I found it very compelling without having listened to the chatter, right? So the chatter we can get into later about how it's slightly not changed how I feel, but added more color, I suppose. But I just thought it was so interesting having Klein and Coates just kind of so paradigmatic, like so emblematic of these two different positions. And in doing Uncertain Things, I've kind of, coming from a more left background, I've kind of talked with a lot more people on the right and the center. And so I've kind of like, I'd still consider myself of the left, but I'm much more of the Ezra Klein left these days. And Coates is much more of the left where I used to feel much more attached to. And it was so interesting to me to have these two people espousing the different points of view and completely talking past each other, like could not hear each other really. And then the other thing I found so compelling was they got into this question of like, what is the role of the public commentator? And they both had different opinions. And I am more sympathetic to Ezra's position of the responsibility he feels in how to talk right now as a public figure and the responsibility to talk to folks on the right. But I also understand where Coates is coming from, which is like, I have an agenda, I have an ideology, and my job is to espouse that ideology come what may. And I thought they were both interesting and valid points of view on how to approach this current moment. I had the suspicion that if we all went the way of Coates, it's going to be very bad news for us in the long term, but it doesn't necessarily mean that people can't exist doing that work. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. I mean, before you actually give us a real response, I want to just put away the implication that anybody here says that some opinions should just not exist. Like, because the idea that nobody say, like, if Coates wants to have his terrible approach to media, that's nobody in this forum would say he should not.
Right.
Should have a right to. The question is on the merits of those arguments, not on whether they should exist.
Or rather, like, it's in my mind, it's fine for them to coexist.
No, that's also fine. Again, by nature, they will coexist if they exist in co. But
yes.
But I just want credit for my showing maturity and self-restraint with the number of, colorful epithets that I had that I kept wanting to insert every time you said something to describe either Ezra or Ta, and I held back. I did not interrupt you once.
Yes.
Epithets reserved.
So I have a confession. I did watch the discussion that they had. I was also in Portland, like out every morning till 1:00 in the morning and writing every day. So I watched it probably without the attention that a lot of other people did. My impression was that I thought Klein was really trying to be what he's doing. Like, let's have a conversation about this. And I didn't see Coates as combative, but I saw him as doctrinaire. And I think what anybody, you just said, Vanessa, you said you've moved in your, opinions of things. And that's what we do. Like, I don't think the same thing I did when I was 17 or even 37. Like, you meet other people. I think, maybe I'll just speak for myself, but I think it should be universal. The most important thing you can have as a journalist, if you're doing this reporting, is curiosity. Doesn't mean you have to like what people tell you, or that you have to agree with them. But I think you kind of owe it to your story and to how you're thinking to talk to people. I talked to a 17-year-old, Native American activist. I talked to a Groyper. I talked to the Kirk people. I talked to the Antifa people. I, tried to talk to the feds. They don't really want to talk to me. But look, maybe we're going to, Rodney King, can't we just all get along? Like, can we just sort of be curious about things? And I found in that conversation that Coates seemed incurious. He had his horse and he was going to ride it. Now, we have a lot of people like that in our worlds, whether it's, a certain religious dogma or, mostly political. I can only say, I said something on my podcast with Sarah Hepler the other day, plug, smoke him if you got him. I said, I disagree with you. Let's have dinner. Like, that's how I want to approach people when they come to me. And I think that Klein tried to do that more than Coates did. But the people that are doctrinaire are very or can tend to be very vocal about it because they're very upset because they cannot see how you can see any other way. We've got this going on with Israel and Palestine. Like they just can't. There's just absolutely no way to have this conversation. If you think one way, you're just wrong, and I can't be friends with you. My podcast partner, more than me, certainly, she's lost a lot of friends just because she wants to talk about certain things or she has certain views, and they're just like, I can't be friends with you anymore. It's like, really? That's kind of weird, man.
Yeah, because it seems like to relay what I think Coates was saying was like basically that there is too much at stake to be a public figure and not essentially lambast Kirk for the things he said and did, because there are people who are hurt by people like that, and if you don't speak up for those people, then you're kind of doing a disservice. And so in his worldview of his responsibility as a public figure, it's like, that's what I must do. I must speak up and call out injustice when I see it.
Now, again, I didn't watch it as closely as you did, but do you think he had a clear-eyed view of who Kirk was?
From having listened and having read his article on Vanity Fair.
There's a response to Ezra, and just for the context, for Ezra saying that Charlie Kirk was doing politics the right way. That was Ezra Klein's eulogy to Charlie Kirk.
That was the offending line, the thing that was most upsetting.
And the fact that the entire article really was, as we've mentioned earlier in the interview, was really, really measured and expressed, there's nothing that I share with Charlie Kirk, except I respect the fact that he did politics right. And that was I'm not one to give Ezra Klein a lot of credit, but that was truly an assertion of the liberal value of, we have full disagreement and we're doing it publicly in order to persuade people and to combat in the arena of ideas. Attacking him violently crosses the line, and it is the unquestionable line between speech and violence.
And Klein very conscientiously omits what Kirk did and said. He only says, I disagreed with him on almost everything. However, he was doing politics the right way, like Adam said. Coates had like the opposite, right, in his article. It's just basically a litany, right, of what Kirk said and did that was offensive. And I didn't know very much about Kirk, like I said. So I'm learning firsthand from Coates all of the horrible things that Kirk said. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, does that make me reevaluate my initial response, which was much more in the Kleinian sense, because these were the people shaping my thought process and reflections. And I wrote on the Substack about it. And I guess I just thought, well, if it were Trump who had been assassinated, someone who I actually do know more about, I think even knowing the horrible things that I think that he's done, I think now with the hindsight of wisdom from talking to people, I would be more measured in my response. So I don't think I completely reevaluated my thinking just having read all the horrible things he did. On the other hand, I was kind of compelled by like, why do we need to put him on a pedestal though? Like, I think that Klein did the right thing in the immediate aftermath of an assassination to have this rhetoric and tone that was very kind of putting a hand across the party line. But on the other hand, I don't necessarily feel like we need to like lionize Kirk to the extent that he's being lionized.
I have to stop you there because Klein was not doing that.
No, Klein wasn't.
And certainly nobody in this conversation is doing
Coates would say that he was. Coates would say that he was because of that line, right? Politics the right way.
I want to separate because I think all of us will probably respond the same way. And regardless of Kirk, like I don't think I agree with Kirk about anything. I don't even like his rhetoric about Israel particularly, but but I certainly don't like the kitschification and the beatification that he has underwent since. I don't love those graffitis of him with angel wings. I don't like any of that stuff because that's just, because obviously it's ick. And to the extent that it's being used politically in order to galvanize backlash of violence, that's awful. So, I mean, let's just box it, because I think we all agree about this point. So I do want to hear, I do want you to zero in on what you feel that is the legitimate part of Coates' criticism of Ezra. Because Ezra was only in the immediate eulogy, just wanted to clarify that there is a bright line between speech and violence, and Kirk was firmly acting within the line of speech. And therefore, there is no wishy-washiness on maybe he kind of deserved it because some of the things that he said said hurt people. That's what Ezra was saying.
Right.
You can argue with him. You can criticize him publicly that his rhetoric was, maybe more than offensive. Maybe it was actually leading to policies that Ezra considers obnoxious. But there is still a bright line between this and violence, and what was done to him was crossing that line.
Right.
That's the point about the right way. The right way not being he is representing ideas that I love. This was disagreement done the right way.
Mm-hmm. So as I'm understanding Coates' commentary to Ezra, then it's that how could this be politics the right way when this is a person that has been so offensive to so many people that he is actually endangering people.
And this is it, right?
Yeah.
Actually endangering. This is the thing that
because he's a white supremacist, because he's
unacceptable. Right? No, but this is the point of this is the unacceptable part. In the sense that people's speech might have consequences to people's lives in the political world is the definition of politics. You're trying to persuade people in order to affect change in reality. So yes, it's going to have some effects on people's lives, and some of them you might not like. Some debates about the exact range of legitimate care for self-identifying transgender people is up for debate, and every person who disagrees with the other side might be unhappy about some of the results that emerge from this. The debate about abortion leads to real consequences in people's lives. So of course, this is the nature of politics. This is not what Ezra Klein was saying the right was defending. So if we take Coates seriously and not assume that he didn't read Ezra Klein or didn't understand what Ezra Klein was doing, give Coates all the credit of intelligence, what he's actually arguing is that violence might sometimes be not that bad when being in response to some speech, which in his mind, in Coates' mind, also constitutes violence.
He does, to be fair, he does have a line that says words are not violence in the Vanity Fair piece. So he at least pays lip service to this idea. But then he kind of undermines it, of course, in the next paragraph by saying that, but Kirk did kind of incite violence. So
I just would like to, I didn't know that much about Charlie Kirk. I knew who he was, I'm obviously part of the culture here. But, we're talking about, all these things that he said that were bad, that were hateful. Oh, whoa. Sorry, I just had a really weird noise happen behind me. Did you hear that?
Yeah, it was like a wind-up toy.
Was that like a giant bug?
I know, it was like a creepy door opening or something, ha-ha. But here's the thing, a lot of people really responded to him. And that's what Klein was saying. He's going out there and he's talking to people. You disagree with him on abortion. I disagree with him on, whatever. Yes, that's okay. But there are a lot of people in this country that really responded to him. And, they have a right to their opinion too. I didn't see the videos that you saw, Vanessa. This is really weird. I'm sorry. The sound is I feel like a spirit's going to come down and attack me any minute. Yeah, I am in a pretty old house at the moment.
Maybe when you say Charlie Kirk's name 7 times.
I said 3 times. I'm going to just disappear. I'm just poof.
Maybe it's Tucker Carlson's demon.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Let me see. What am I have all these scratches on my body. I'm sorry. I've lost my train of thought here now. But I just, he was important to certain people. And, obviously we see the things that are really obnoxious that he said. And you also see the times when he wasn't obnoxious, when he was talking to someone who was, at war with her own body and didn't know what to do. And Juan didn't know whether to transition or not. And he just like basically wished her peace and to maybe talk to someone that could help her. I don't think that's hate. I mean, I'm sure there are worse things, but I can't like, we just have to remember that there are a lot of people that responded to him and they're Americans too.
Yeah. Coates felt the need to cherry pick every worst thing he ever said.
And I'm sure the people that are beatifying him are picking picking those things. That's like how it's going to be.
The thing that I also find unpersuasive on the idea that Coates is that opposed to hate is that he is opposed to hate that he doesn't like.
Yeah.
I don't see him coming out against people expressing vitriol that he just is, I won't say not necessarily fine with, but with whose general ideological direction he's okay with, right? He's not going out talking about all the rhetoric of Hamas supporters in America. He's not going out talking about all the rhetoric of the Black Lives Matters ideologues. He supports what he supports, and when it's hate from his side, either he turns a blind eye to it or even justifies it as part of the game. I don't respect this argument categorically because hate is not really a tangible idea. Hate is an emotional response to things that you like, right? Like it's a negative emotional response to things that you like. That's what is being used as hate in the political sphere.
I would like
when you say that I disagree about the exact policies about transgenderism, you call me hate or vice versa, right?
I would want to know what you think, both of you think though, about like what is the responsibility, if any? What is the responsibility of a public commentator to try and quote unquote protect or amplify the needs of people you think are being oppressed or need to like have their stories amplified. Like that is very often what we do as journalists.
Can we please, in the same way that the right needs to stop using the words mainstream media, can we find other words than oppressed and amplified and all these HR language? Because I don't know what amplified means. I don't know, like
write about, expose.
talk about issues that you think are important, right? Why is like what also
right.
I believe like some issues are important that are not to do with oppression, and also not every person in distress is being oppressed. Poor people are not oppressed.
But I mean, for example,
its own category of difficulty.
By the way, like I'm actually much more on the Ezra side of this, but I'm just trying to
I understand.
Bring in more. But like,
it's a fair question.
Like Ezra theoretically is completely on Coates' side in terms of like what kinds of policies he'd like to see in order to protect certain types of people. Right?
I don't even think that's true. I don't know that it's true.
I think they're very aligned in terms of what they would like the kinds of people
I think they're very
about.
aligned as long as Ta-Nehisi Coates is. Ezra Klein loves being wonky and loves to think about policy. I think a lot of his policies might be wrong, but he likes thinking about policies.
Right.
Ta-Nehisi Coates does not think about policies. Ta-Nehisi Coates thinks about his version of Tucker Carlson's demons. He plays his game in the spiritual arena of cosmic moral battles, and that does not lend itself to concrete policies, because when you come to concrete policies, almost always you're making compromises. Almost always somebody suffers the trade-off of a certain policy. And I don't think he has it in him to besmirch his self-sense of this moral paragon of all that is good and free and actually commit to a real policy. No, he plays a role, which you might say is an important narrative, literary role of presenting a picture that is maybe affecting, that people relate to and understand, and maybe makes them think and readjust their policies. I don't think it necessarily does it in a good way, but clearly he has that ability. I don't think he has the ability to come down to earth and say, okay, so what reality do you want to see in the world? What would be a quote unquote equitable reality? What would the end of racism or oppression look like in your eyes?
I think I'd like to try to answer your question too, which is like, what is the responsibility of the person that is interpreting and writing about the culture or podcasting about the culture? I'm just going to say it's completely individual. I mean, you've got your Peggy Noonan and you've got your David Brooks and you've got your, maybe a comedian. I mean, humor is always welcome. Try to not fit into a box, right? This is the way we do it now. No, you got to do it this way. You got to write it that way. You got to make sure that you use the word oppression or whatever it is in every column because we got to hit them on the head with that. Go, 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 go. We've got that goal and work toward it. It's like, really? This is exhausting and like really boring too. If you're a good writer and a good thinker and you're curious about the culture and you talk to people, maybe you bake pies and that's how you do it. Maybe you sing songs to people. I don't know, but do it in a way that engages people, right? Engages with the story and not because you're going to be like an entertainer, though I'm sure people that do that. But just don't do it like, so my team wins. I find that really boring and it really doesn't help explain things to people.
Yeah.
I don't think.
I mean, Coates asked Klein very early on, like, wasn't silence an option? Couldn't you have just not said anything at all?
That's always an option. And also always sometimes a very, very good option. Actually, don't say anything.
I think it is. And I mean, I've definitely held my tongue many a time because I don't necessarily want to come out on things publicly that I feel like I don't know what I'm talking about, or I just don't want to enter into that. However, I do want to give Klein credit for saying something when he didn't have to and trying to put into practice a kind of discussion, dialogue that he wants to see more of in the world and thinks could be very important and maybe even critical in order to kind of diffuse the tensions that are happening in this country.
Amen.
But then backlash. He gets tons of backlash, and I was at an event yesterday and people want to just dunk on him and I feel like it's just so the broad brush is just like, well, he's just now he's a white supremacist or whatever.
Oh yeah, sure.
And it's like none of the, and it just, to me, it just exposes how blinded so many people still are in terms of understanding where the hell we're going. Like, do people not think these steps ahead about where we end up when we continue the same rhetoric over and over again?
No, they don't, Vanessa. They just feel comfortable in their tribe and that they're just going to reify it in every way they possibly can.
And it's important to remember that Klein participated in that game for a good part of his career. And, I don't wish it on anybody. And I think Klein, another thing to really credit Klein for, I think his ability to evolve and change and modulate his both his views and his journalistic strategies, commendable, absolutely commendable, and should be in and of themselves a model, even if his conclusions are still, I still disagree with them. But it is, but it is important to remember that this is the culture that he came from and also helped popularized.
Yeah.
Specifically, you're saying that now everybody calls him a white supremacist, which is why a white supremacist? In what context? Because he disagreed with Ta-Nehisi Coates, which I guess is the category of white supremacist for many people in American elite. If you disagree with Ta-Nehisi Coates,
I was exaggerating a little bit, but yeah, sure.
Fair enough. But I do remember very clearly the 2014 controversy with Klein and Sam Harris, where he represented Sam Harris as a white supremacist. And it didn't say that overtly, but he allowed people to say that on Vox without correcting them, and encouraged that view in the whole, Charles Murray controversy. Yeah. Just because the argument was because you're interviewing Charles Murray, who himself is not a white supremacist, but because you interviewed Charles Murray, gave him the platform, because that was the days of deplatforming, etc. You have in fact dabbled in eugenics, and that was a vicious, dishonest representation. And but to your question, I think part of what you're trying to get at is how much obligated you are to say or not to say something. I think this is what Rommy is saying about it being a personal choice. I think it's also a personal choice in thinking about what is the world that you're playing, that you're interested in, and you think that your activity in is of value. Like the things that I just naturally care about are those more contentious topics, and I made choices in my career and in my life to enable myself to engage in these topics as much as I can, and openly, and with ways that I don't feel like I have to dishonestly represent what I think. But I don't think nobody has to participate in media. And if you're participating in media, you can participate under whatever role that you find comfortable, where you think your commentary is useful, where you think your analysis is valuable, or your access and reporting is meaningful. I think the only thing that I'd say try to avoid, which again, we're all for, like, do anything, but I recommend avoiding any situation where you're forced to, whether by your own disposition or by the people around you, to misrepresent the truth as you understand it. That is the thing that you want to avoid. If you are in a situation where, because of your own inhibitions, because of your professional concerns, or because of the social pressures around you, find yourself kind of bending the facts, bending things that are obviously, a reality that is obviously one thing, and you're starting to describe it in the opposite way, or starting to round corners, starting to paint the facts a little bit, then maybe you should not participate in that field. Maybe it's not for you, because if you're finding yourself moving towards a lie, maybe choose a different direction.
The tricky thing, though, is that you don't even have to feel yourself going towards a lie. You just cherry pick the thing, right? Like we were talking about earlier. You just find the thing that you want to talk about, and then in that act, even if you completely and accurately represent this one little thing, it's completely out of the context of how big a deal was it? How often is it happening?
This is actually good. This is actually a good thing. And I want to hear both of you, if you don't mind. This is a bigger epistemic question. We know that some people find themselves in the situation that Vanessa just described, that they go into their profession in a certain way, and they believe that they're, like we're talking about journalists or people who monger in information. So the information mongers believe themselves to be truth seekers, possibly. And, from the outside, it's clear that through whatever choices or social developments found themselves misrepresenting reality in a very, very strong way. In those fiery but mostly peaceful Chiron writers, I don't think most of them were propagandists. I've worked at CNN. I know the people there. I don't think they were there. Those are not the people writing for Jacobin. And yet, to Vanessa's question, they did end up walking towards the lie, but they did it one cherry pick at a time. What is a heuristic? What is a way for you to recognize that you are slowly narrowing reality around you because you are uncomfortable with the cognitive dissonance of actually, looking at the truth, the dissonance between reality and your, either predispositions or the people around you? How do you get yourself out of it without getting canceled? Because people usually do that when they get canceled, and then, suddenly I see things from the outside. Okay, that's not impressive. How do you do that while you're still there? How do you correct course while you're still there, sliding towards the lie?
So I think if you're lucky / unlucky enough to be freelance, as I always have been, you can pick who you write for, right? So you're not going to really slide toward that very often, because if you wind up writing for a place and then they kind of make your work look bad, or they are really pushing you to do something, you just don't write for them anymore. Like I've had to do that, not about Portland, but like in other parts of my life. But I'm going to actually not push back at all, but kind of maybe complicate the picture. Let's say it's the guy at CNN, and he's 38 years old, and he's been there 5 years, and he's working his way up, and he's got a mom who's sick, and he's got a kid who is, he's got to pay for the kid's school, and somehow his wife lost her job, and he's got to keep his job. And So it's like, how do I keep my self-respect and feel like I'm serving the audience, but also keep my job? Like, and what's happening at the network? The network is like, usually the thing that people say is like, well, they're going for clicks. But if it's not clicks, you're just like, they just want you to say like, listen, just like when you're there, don't talk to these people. We got enough of those people. Joe got that. So you go get this. And maybe you're just sort of like, it's like a drop at a time. And you don't even realize right away that you're making compromises that are actually, in the end, in the immediacy is going to kind of hurt the audience because you're shading the story, but in the end is going to, hurt you. Do you guys know anybody that like during this whole craziness of 2020 just like quit their jobs? Because, and again, like how many journalism jobs are there?
Well, Barry Weiss.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did. And let's give a toast to our friend Barry, who is now, we always knew she was going where she's going. But
talk about how useless a phrase mainstream media is.
It totally. we all are now like, where do I make my money? I make my money on Substack. I also write for Reason. I'm writing for Real Clear, and I'm doing journalism.
No, and yet, and in inversion, it's the mainstream media who bought the free press. So
that's right. Well,
we're in a new world, which is kind of cool.
And I think for people, a lot of whom I know, we could talk about Andrew Sullivan, we could talk about Barry, we could talk about Katie Herzog, people that just either were fired by their publications because they had the wrong politics or just said, I'm out of here. And you can still tell the stories you want to tell and write the way you want to write. You just have to figure out a way to do it, as opposed to saying, I'll just, sell a little bit of my soul every day because that's what the boss wants.
Vanessa, any other thoughts? And I will also complicate Rommy's point because I think
Rommy's
part of the interesting, Rommy's complication, because I think I mentioned the financial concern, the professional concerns, but the more tricky part is when, and this is human nature. It's how your own self-perception and perception of reality shifts and bends according to your incentives, right? And that's the real tricky thing to fight. It's one thing to be the apparatchik in some kind of Soviet media who knows they're lying and they are so cynical about anything that I don't give a crap. I'm just going to post whatever propaganda the leader wants me to, and when the leader is replaced by their opponent, I'm going to post new propaganda. When Putin replaced Yeltsin, nobody needed to be fired from any of the state media because they just knew, now we're going this line. This is the new style. So that's one thing. But for most people, they still want to feel like they're telling the truth or that they're doing something right. And that's when the real cognitive dissonance kicks in. And how do you fight that? This is because this stays with you. And this creates a whole culture around the lie where you have struggle sessions with other people who are telling themselves similar lies. And I think most of Blocked and Reported is about stories of these
internet bullshit.
Internet bullshit, but also how this internet bullshit then ends up playing in on a local real life way, which is fascinating. But it's also tying together the cognitive dissonance and affirming it to each other. That's the scary thing, Vanessa.
I think Rommy answered it in a bit more of a. Sorry, do you prefer Nancy? Should I say Nancy?
I love it. No, I love that he calls me Rommy. Like nobody does. I love it. Please.
Okay, so I've adopted it. Rommy, I kind of answered in a more kind of practical industry way. And when you asked the question, I was thinking more in personally how I reflect back on the times that I've maybe produced work that was in a bit of an echo chamber. And I think the only ways to bust out as much as you can are listening to things that are different, like listening to other people having conversation. And I would say that we're currently in our own little bubble. There's I'm now in an ecosystem of people that are all kind of saying the same thing in a different way. So I like to bounce back and forth. And you
should read the Wall Street Journal and the Atlantic.
And then listen to I like to listen to different podcasts.
That's your range, the Wall Street Journal.
Oh, whatever. I'm sorry. I'm Mother Jones. I don't
know. And I think also I kind of always approached writing like a bit like a student with a thesis, you know? I often like had my little argument that I was trying to make. I was kind of I like to write more like essayistic type stuff.
Yeah.
And I think I probably a few times just kind of picked the things that I wanted to make my argument, right? And I think I could have stood to be a bit more curious, like you said, at the outset maybe, and allow the argument to come after the reporting and conversations, as opposed to kind of knowing what I was setting out to do before I went and did it, you know?
I've noticed lately when I'm writing like a long piece, and like, okay, you have some data that you want to sort of confirm, right? Okay, there were this many arrests. Like, what else happened here? And I look, and then when I find myself looking too much to confirm that piece, I'm like, you got to stop. This isn't the story if you're only looking there. So yeah, listen to different things and, check yourself. And I don't know, I'd be a terrible opinion writer because I don't think anybody should give a shit what I think. I think that that's not my job. I think my job is to show you what I've been told and what I found. And then you go make up your own mind. I mean, I'm going to have a point of view sometimes, sure, but I'm not trying to convince you of anything.
Right. And I think the best commentaries that I can think of is about, part of it is the flourish and the style and the fun of it, sure. But the ones that stick and the people that I would actually turn to listen to their perspective are the people who reason their way to there, which means that they show you how they winnow the facts and get to a certain conclusion. And then you can actually have an argument with
conclusion.
It. or maybe they are certain. Our friend Batya keeps lambasting me for saying, I feel like you're especially since October 7th, on certain things is not what is not your brand anymore. You're like maybe at most maybe ambiguous things, maybe sometimes, but I disagree. I think there's still a lot of uncertainty, but it's not uncertainty about everything. But there are we're not epistemically so uncertain that we think that there is no such thing as a truth worth figuring out. So I think that's the one thing that I think is missing from the debate about echo chambers. Everybody has their, preferred voices. I think that for me, my own trick against echo chambers is that is my very rapid onset boredom. So if I feel like I've heard an argument too many times,
that's good.
But I think the more important thing is, again, well-reasoned arguments and factuality, right? And that can be made by many people because reality is, much of it is uncertain and much of it is still confusing. So if you're actually listening to the arguments and not just to the emotional thrust of the conclusion, emotional moralistic thrust of the conclusion, then you're doing something right. Then you're doing something right that allows you to have the back and forth. And I think this is, to wrap it all up, this is what Ezra at least attempts to do. And this is what Kirk, I think, at least performed publicly to be trying to do. And this is exactly what Coates does not like. And this is why I am very, I don't love Coates' view on this.
Yeah, me neither. Guys, we're going to a outside haunted mansion.
Oh, how fun.
In about 12 minutes.
So just give us to take us out. Tell us about the bread.
Oh, yeah. So I made, again, we're having people over for dinner I made some homemade Italian bread, and I made a homemade banana cream pie, and I have I'm going to make a chicken and dumplings. I have it started, and then when we get back, I'll just throw the more sounds from this crazy house.
The ghost.
So yeah, we're gonna have a big dinner after the haunted mansion.
And fans can find more at Let Them Bake Cake.
Make More Pie is my Substack. Yep, or Nancy Rommelmann at Substack.com. And then my podcast with Sarah Hepelo, which is Smoke 'em If You Got 'em. And I'll be writing for Reason and Real Clear. I got some more Portland stuff coming up, so keep an eye on that. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Rommy.
Thank you so much.
Rommelmann.
Okay, bye.
Thank you for listening to Uncertain Things. Follow us on uncertain.substack.com or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're feeling generous, give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and share us with your friends and enemies. Until next time, stay sane.